Whether you're in a small or a large organization, there's one thing I think is the most vital thing, and you have to, and this, what I'm going to tell you here, has to come from inside you, right? And you have to absolutely believe in it. And I absolutely believe in what I'm about to tell you.
I'm chatting with JG Chirapurath, Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer. First of all, what does it mean to be a solutions-centric marketer?
Leadership is about sacrifice. Leadership is about connections. Leadership is about bringing people along for the ride in a way that you believe in them and you believe in yourself. I'll say that there are three things that everybody needs. It's something to believe in. It's someone to believe in, and someone who believes in them. The duty of care that goes with leadership is working hard in figuring out the different ways you can sort of motivate them and give them those three things.
Earlier in your career, founded a technology firm. It was acquired by Intel. Is that where you learned this from? Is that important in your views on leadership and marketing?
Look, I have been a seeker. I have always sought out one singular thing: how to.
Well, welcome to Top CMO. I'm chatting with JG Chirapurath, who has the title of Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer. That title, JG, has some implications for how you market. First of all, what does it mean to be a solutions-centric marketer?
Well, what that means is we go beyond just offering products to our customers. What we really seek to do is present the solutions that they can use and get productive with almost immediately. So effectively, we look at a customer, we understand their context, we understand the world in which they operate, and we offer them a solution that fits exactly what they're looking for. Sometimes we have all the components on our shelves. Sometimes we work with partners to assemble a services story. Sometimes we work with other ISVs to basically complete the picture. But ultimately, the way our customers experience us is through a series of solutions. And solutions, using the English word, is the answer. So we show up with answers.
Well, and it's interesting because I've heard you talk about the difference between, I'm going to call this JG your ham sandwich theory. And that is the difference between, we can sell you bread and cheese and ham, and we can sell you that, or we can sell you a ham sandwich. And what we decide to sell you and what we decide to market you, whether we choose door A, the ingredients, door B, the ham sandwich, actually has profound implications about aligning your whole marketing department and what you're actually messaging. So what is your ham sandwich theory?
Well, my ham sandwich is exactly that. I mean, sometimes you just want a ham sandwich. Or sometimes you say, look, I have the time to buy all three things, all the ingredients separately, and assemble that sandwich together. Now, how you essentially deliver that has profound implications in how demand generation works, how you might run your digital means of engagement with your customers, how your go-to-market ultimately works, right? So think about it. If you open the package, you've assembled the ham sandwich, the way you deliver that ham sandwich, right, is very different than, let's say, you brought the ingredients, bread, cheese, and ham. So the way you deliver it, the way you experience it completely changes. So it's incumbent upon us to really understand, just to shift to the SAP context, the industries that we are operating in, right? The needs of those industries, the solutions that we offer them. And as a company, we have answers for every room in their house, whether it's the finance department, the operations department, the supply chain, the HR department, the marketing department, the technologists in the organization. So we've got an answer, for every part of that organization. But that organization requires us to show up with answers, solutions, not technology bits and bytes that they have to put together.
So meaning that, if I'm going to use your analogy here, you may have the ham sandwich that's on the hoagie roll for a certain type of audience. You may have the ham sandwich that's like a kind of nice, low carb wrap that's kind of there because they need it. You might have the ham sandwich that's your little finger tea sandwiches with like the crust cut off the bread. I don't know how far we can take this, JG, but your solutions oriented, you're selling the ham sandwich, but you're trying to have for wherever that organization, like a version of that sandwich that makes sense for them, or else you're going to change the ham to turkey or roast beef or something else and provide the solution they need.
You nailed it. And ultimately, you nailed it. So, and ultimately for us, it's, if you were to look at the company SAP, it's been in business for 50 years. Last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. A company that has been successful for 50 years is a company that really understands its customers. That's the one thing I learned here. This is a company that's incredibly customer obsessed. It is so focused on exactly how to make these customers successful. And because of that, and the only way you get that is if you basically show up in all of the ways that the customers expect. You're not just selling them products. You're ultimately assembling these products in the way that you describe. I love that. The hoagie roll, the crustless ham sandwich.
Well, and how does that have practical implications with, I don't see any, large enterprise company saying like, yeah, we don't care about our customers, right? Like, we could care less, whatever they do, we sell what we sell, right? There's going to be at least lip service paid, but some companies, and you've had stints at, a lot of the big enterprise companies, including most notably, 2 long stints at Microsoft. How is it different in marketing if you're like, everyone kind of says they're customer centric, but if you're solution centric, you meet the customer where they are, how is that different than just being like technology centric? You're a deeply technological company. Or let's say another one is you're, maybe, less common in technology, but you could be very brand centric, right? You're like, this is what we brand, this is what we stand for, and that's centric. What does it mean to be customer centric compared to a lot of other players that are going to have, solutions, which could mean services they offer that customize?
Yeah. Look, you're absolutely right that every customer is across the board, services their customers. Customers are their only religion. The big difference is in the space that we occupy, I do see a ton of the industry, right, being so focused on technology for technology's sake. Nobody clarifies exactly how you can use it and what some productive ways to get started is. That is the biggest difference we have. So let me give you a very practical example. When we think of customer journeys, now remember, in the pandemic, most of customer journeys, most of the ways you describe products to customers or how customers experience it has shifted to digital means. This means that we not just take a customer through the product. If they wish to experience a product, we take them through the product. But for the most part, we also have to help customers understand the solutions that are offered, right? So so effectively what I'm describing here is sometimes we tell them about the bread, the cheese, and the ham, and we help them to assemble that sandwich on their own. Or sometimes we show them the ham sandwich and we let them experience the assembled sandwich in the way that we've sort of assembled it. So, in most cases, in companies, it's either one or the other. In our case, we've got to do both really, really, really well.
And one of the maybe unsung jobs of a CMO is just aligning, particularly at big companies, a lot of people in the same direction. And when you're hiring for marketing positions, sales positions, there's a lot of movement, right? Between big enterprise companies, you tend to look for people that have experience that you're looking for. So you pull people from other companies. They may not, necessarily believe in this ethos or this alignment. They might not understand what it means, or they might, to use our metaphor, they come in and they're like, yeah, I get you. You want me to sell a ham sandwich, but they're going to focus all about that ham is expertly cured and smoked and there's brown sugar on it. And they're going to take you through every feature of that ham because that's what they were taught to do. And the problem is you've got tens of thousands of employees and you got really big teams. How do you, this kind of organization, convert people over and align that when people says, yeah, I know what you mean by the ham sandwich, but that's not what they do?
Look, I think it comes down to two things for me in particular. And this is as much about the way you show up with your organization than anything else. SAP's motto is run simple. Okay. And that core philosophy, if you were to spend a minute and reflect on it, run simple, is in everything that we do. What I add to it is radical prioritization, right? What I always say is that not everything is important. And to align an organization, the more things you have on the list to align, the harder it becomes. It almost has to be a series of concentric circles. There has to be something at the core that is so inviolate, so vital that everybody understands, that when you sort of get it, you get the method to the madness in the next concentric circle and the next, and so on and so forth. So it's like a set of ripples that you have to do, and it's never one and done. And I think that's one of the mistakes that I see lots of folks make. They say, well, I told you this. Why am I repeating this to you again? So sometimes you've got to keep stressing the same things over and over again so that the organization understands what you're about. This is one of the reasons why, in fact, every company that I see has something called when the fiscal year ends, they have a kickoff, right, for the new fiscal year.
Sure.
One of the things I do is I don't change my stump speech. Right. I keep saying, so if you were to look at it, in any sort of journey, particularly the journey that I'm in right now, if you were to go back and look at my last two speeches, you'd find that they're incredibly consistent. The priorities are not changed because we serve the same markets, we serve the same customers, our products continue to get better, our engines continue to improve. So the reality is the core of what we are cannot change. So I think, to me, it's more of the cultural change and the change agent that you have to be in these roles to drive success within a large organization.
Well, and also put another way, I think when you talk about kind of repetition of the message and consistency of the message, I mean, the issue is on any kind of large organization, there's a whole bunch of decisions that are going to be made that affect, the fate of the organization, that affect the success of the marketing and solutions department, that are going to be made by people when you're not in the room, right? You're not going to be there, particularly at a large organization, but really any organization. Yes. And they're going to have to take some ownership of this decision. And they're going to, and then, they may not have been trained in the decision for this exact scenario, this exact situation. And they're going to make the call. And your success as CMO is going to be related to what call they make. And so the only thing they have to guide them in that is like, what are our values? What's our North Star? What have I heard maybe JG say again and again and again that it's so embedded in me that, oh, that's right. We're solutions centric. We run simple. We radically prioritize. That's what we're going to do in this case. And that's how you can help steer the ship, even when you're not in this meeting that you didn't know was critical, but is going to make or break this customer that's your most important customer.
Yeah. Look, you absolutely nailed it. Look, I think for the most part, it's also an act of empowerment, right? So it's part of you, right? You repeat certain things and you say, these are my priorities. But the reality is, if you can't empower your people, empower those marketers, empower the people down the line, you'll never be successful in your mission, because you consistently have to convince people why this is important, right? And have them own it, and have that pride of ownership spread far and wide and deep inside all of these organizations, or it'll never really come together in a way where, you can be successful. And when I say you, I mean the royal you. I meant the entire organization, right? So ultimately, that is you're touching on things that are, I would say, vital, not just in large organizations, but in smaller organizations. I mean, I've started companies, and I still remember there was a point. I still remember this. Okay, these were years ago, but when we went from being an intimate, say 30, 40 person organization, like a company, to where we started to see success in the marketplace and we started to expand. And pretty soon I'd walk into work and see people I never knew. You see what I'm saying? I mean, these were all hired. Somebody else hired them, right? So I'm like, who are these people? So when you get to that number, like 100, maybe a 200, and you have people spread across multiple divisions, ostensibly carrying the same badge, working on the same mission, the act of basically building fans the act of bringing people along for the ride becomes one of the most vital and important things a leader can do. And that's not a statement about a CMO. It's a statement about a CRO, a CEO, so on and so forth.
Well, and one of the challenges with that for any kind of growing organization, and then I want to touch on your unique background that you have, that you alluded to. But one of the challenges is this idea that at the minute you stop having, for a smaller organization, and there's, by the way, I should say that, SAP, I think last market cap, I think it was worth $140 billion. There's a lot of CMOs of companies that are listening that are worth 139.9 billion, less than that, or smaller, right? And one of the things that happens is, in your example, is you stop meeting with everyone. So you don't even know who's being hired. So the issue is that not only do you have the challenge of these are your values, I need to impart them, I need to be consistent, but someone needs to hear and receive that and impart it to someone else you're never going to meet. And so how do you think about that in your message too, where you don't want it to be kind of like, I'm going to use a very analog example, but like a photocopy of a photocopy, right? Yeah. It's like someone has a photocopy of the message, they make a photocopy of that, something gets lost in the translation, and your, run simple or radical prioritization becomes something totally different than you intended. And that's the message they get. So how do you do that? And how is this relevant to the smaller organization?
Look, I think whether you're in a small or a large organization, there's one thing I think is the most vital thing. And what I'm going to tell you here has to come from inside you, right? And you have to absolutely believe in it. And I absolutely believe in what I'm about to tell you. Leadership is about sacrifice. Leadership is about connections. Leadership is about bringing people along for the ride in a way that you believe in them and you believe in yourself, right? That you can lead people through all of this. I'll say that there are three things that everybody needs. Everybody, you need it, I need it, people that work in any organization needs it. It's something to believe in. It's someone to believe in, and someone who believes in them. Right? And the act of leadership, the duty of care that goes with leadership is working hard, right? Day and night, obsessing about your organization, how big, large, or small, in figuring out the different ways you can sort of motivate them and give them those three things, right? So one small, sort of vehicle I use, I'm giving of my time, right? So I'm ready to meet anyone in my organization at any time. I'll make time for them. Sometimes it may not be during the working hours, but I'm able to make my time available to them at any time of the day, right? The second thing is I also use things like open office hours, where I host a forum. Anyone can walk in and ask me anything that they desire, right? And if I can answer it, I will answer it. So part of this is keeping the communication going. It's part of it is keeping the dialogue going so people understand what you stand for. Now, if I were to show up in a new organization and say, hey guys, this is who I am, these are my values, believe me, because I told you that these are my values, to me, it's hollow. How leaders are experienced is through the day-to-day actions. When you say, I'm going to do this, and they experience it in that way, right? So part of this is the hard work that you have to put in to make sure that people understand who you are as a leader, what's absolutely critical for the organization, what your values are, and what your values aren't, what you'll stand for, what you won't stand for. And that to me is I would tell you it's a daily process. Yeah.
Well, and you alluded to the fact that, you earlier in your career founded a technology firm. It was acquired by Intel. Is that where you learned this from? And do you recommend, like, as an experience for a CMO to like go start a company? Is that important in your views on leadership and marketing? Is it something that's just unusual and kind of makes you unique? How do you rate that experience and do you recommend that to others?
Look, I have been a seeker, so I don't know. And so the things that I've sought may not be fit for everybody out there, contemplating a journey or on the same journey as I am. right? But what I will tell you is I have always sought out one singular thing, how to scale things, right? And I continue to be a student of scale, right? So what makes you successful as you go from, say, $5 million in an annual run rate to, say, $100 million? How do you take 100 million and grow it to a billion? How does billion get to be 5 billion? So on and so forth. What you learn about yourself, the skills that you bring in, the kinds of things that you have to do changes at every level of scale. And so all I've learned, right? So I can't tell you that there was a pivotal moment where I learned all of these things. I can't even tell you I've learned all of these things. What I would tell you, though, is that I continue to learn. And the greatest gift the startup places like Microsoft and now SAP has given me is they have given me the patience and the space to sit back and reflect on different levels of scale and how I can apply myself to help these companies and these organizations be successful, and above all, to help grow the people so that they too, in their time, can step up and continue to scale and continue to build. And ultimately, when you think of this, Ben, the one thing I'll point out is, do you know what I want more than anything in this world? I want the folks that work together with me, that I had the pleasure of collaborating with, to go on and do even bigger things. That to me is a movement, right? So to me, that I wish that to be my legacy.
Well, and how do you, when you think about scale, I mean, one of the things that I think is a challenge for a lot of leaders, and they don't have to run it, a team as big as the marketing or solutions team at SAP. But you mentioned achieving scale. And the problem is, no matter how good you are at it, there's still one of you. And you were talking about being quite generous with your time, with just being communication, being open to ideas. Why, what is it about that makes you choose to do that? Because you're a scale-oriented person, and some people listening might say, and other CMOs listening might say, I mean, that sounds great in theory, but there's no way I could handle all the meetings of people who'd want to meet with me. Why do you choose to do that? And how does that give you scale? If that's what you're after, taking the time to do that matters.
Look, I think then the only thing I would tell you is that I think building fans, building belief in the organization as you continue to scale businesses is the most important thing you can do. It's the most important act of alignment you can do. The other thing that I also recommend that your listeners do and think about, now everybody speaks about this, but I think this is very, very vital. Hire well, hire good people. Hire people that have complementary skills to you, that people that you can look at and say, holy smokes, I'm learning something from this person, okay? But you are united in the same sort of value system and beliefs about, creating great leaders, about creating great businesses, so that when you walk together, right, you may learn from each other, but you're united in that journey. And when people see that, sometimes, you can't just say this stuff. When people see that, they're like, okay, I see what it takes to be successful here. I see what the method to the madness is. So the ultimate act of leadership is clarifying the method to the madness. And the ultimate act of scale is continuously reevaluating what the madness is and what that method is as you start growing and scaling things. And that's a statement about businesses, and which is ultimately in the technology game. It's supported by people. People make these businesses, right? So, and you want to invest that time and help people scale, help people understand what their purpose in that journey is, and ultimately what that method is.
Well, and how do you apply that to maybe a current dilemma, let's say, where it's been difficult in the past few years to hire people? That was a function of, things that were referred to as the Great Resignation, where kind of the pandemic maybe shifted quickly priorities of certain people. So in that environment, let's say you've got to hire and you have some spaces you need to fill. But then you want to say, like, I want to hire really well on the other hand. I want people aligned with my values, the organization, especially in critical roles. What do you do in that situation? You get someone in, they seem to be able to do all the skills you need. You have hesitations about whether they match the culture and the values and are aligned with what you set forth. Do you hire them or don't you hire them?
Look, I think ultimately, I may be the wrong person to ask because I've sat on roles because I couldn't find the right candidate. Okay, because I think that you want to find fantastic leaders who can do the job well. Right. So, and I always sort of look at when I hire, I always look at it. Are people teachable? Do they have skills that are complementary? Are they going to fit in culturally? Right. And if these things are all true, you invest. You sort of make a bet and you invest. But it can't be that you wake up one day and say, well, I was in this forum and this person didn't show up well, so I guess I'm cutting bait. That doesn't work either. Because to me, leadership and management in particularly is about a journey that only works, in the space that you're trying to help that person, right? Help that person grow, just like they are helping you grow, right? So I wish there was like a 1, 2, 3 easy thing I can tick off for you. But ultimately, I think investing in people is probably the most profound thing I do, right? Regardless of the function I'm in, both here at SAP as well as my work prior.
And what are you, as you focus on the people, which is I think super interesting, especially at a technology company, right? Where people, it naturally says they're usually not thought of as people-centric companies. You have a real focus on people. What do you do in terms of where does SAP go from here? Where does it go in its marketing? It's a mature company. It's probably a pretty big ship that you can't just to your point, you're very consistent in your message. You're not sort of changing up. We're no longer a solution-centric company. We're something else. You're not doing that. How do you continue to sort of innovate, move into a new direction, look at new opportunities, and also knowing there's the classic innovator's dilemma, which is that when you're big, there's always the up and comers that don't have as big a ship as you. They're usually a little bit more nimble. They can adjust and they can always, and they're usually too small for you to pay attention at the beginning, but they get bigger and bigger and they nip at your heels unless you keep innovating. So how do you think about innovation in your teams, given your size and given that you're established and you're one of the major tech companies?
Here too, it comes down to a couple of things. The first thing is, in my role, I'll speak to myself and how I sort of approach it. My closest, cross-functional partnerships are with my product leaders and my sales leaders. Okay? If you can't understand exactly what is being built and why, and how that's being experienced by your customer at the point of attack, as it were, you've lost the plot as a marketer. Okay? The second thing is what I bring into that relationship, and my core value add is the fact that I have only one religion. That is my customer. I'm ruthlessly focused on what my customers need, and I'm ruthlessly prioritizing exactly what gets built and why, whether it solves a big problem, and more importantly, how this can be packaged together in a way that is transformative in the industry, right? Not every customer out there is saying, I want the latest and greatest things. What they want is to experience technology better. So in the case of SAP, the world's most valuable data flows through SAP. So whatever is most valuable, their financial data, their operational data, their HR data, their marketing data, they all sit inside SAP systems. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Do I build a wall around it and say, I'm sorry, customer, you can't touch it? No. I've got to find the next wave of growth will be to help customers unlock this data for machine learning, for deep analytics purposes, right? That's a new innovation thing. Some of it will be things we build on our own. Some of this will be partnership. That's one of the reasons why I also am responsible for partnerships. The second area is there's a shortage in customers today of what I call core development talent, right? So gone are the days when I wanted something and I'd call somebody up in IT and say, hey, I want this app. Can you build it for me? Right? There is a move towards every person in an organization becoming developers. Marketing people are extending things. Maybe, they look at their CRM system and say that, look, I understand exactly how the lead was obtained. I want to qualify them further. And I understand that the criteria to qualify them is 1, 2, and 3. Rather than call someone to play with that data, you need to equip them with the tools to do it themselves. So the whole, sort of a notion of saying that low code, no code application development that turns everybody inside an organization into a developer is something that I'm super passionate about. And I've got to unlock that valve. Automation is here to stay. So we've got to find ways to improve productivity in organizations so that customers can unlock, more productivity and automate boring, repetitive tasks. I'm also passionate about that. So I gave you 3 areas where SAP is constantly innovating. So there's a core, but the edge of that core is where you're trying to really sort of find new ways of basically growing our products, but more importantly, serving our customers.
And I want to end on something we do call the lightning round. These are rapid response questions. It's gonna go across the board. Kind of short answers, but I want to get your take on a few things that kind of help us understand how you think about marketing.
Yeah.
First question is, what's the best advice you ever got?
Best advice I ever got. Be fearless.
Be fearless. Who gave you the advice, and why has that been impactful in your career?
Be fearless. My father gave me that. My late father gave me that advice. And my mother repeated it in a different way. She called it be brave. It was very profound to me because lots of times we use our own, we argue against ourselves. Sometimes either not to make the right decision, sometimes because it's politically expedient, sometimes to pull up punches, right? Part of this is to basically say that what's the worst that can happen? You must always be brave enough to state your case. You must be brave enough to do the right thing. You must be brave enough to basically bring things together. Just because it's hard, just because it's scary, is not a good reason for you not to do something that is right. That's what it means to.
Well said. And second question for you. Elon Musk, overextended or a prolific entrepreneur?
Why not both? Why not both? I mean, look, there's a reason he's overextended. It's because he's a prolific entrepreneur. And, you got to respect someone who absolutely believes in their own abilities and their own, sort of ways of doing it. It's probably not what I would do, but you got to see and recognize him and his strengths where he believes they are.
What are your shortcomings as a CMO, and who do you surround you with to help complement those? To move the organization forward? Look,
I am a product-centric CMO. So if you haven't guessed, I'm an engineer by training. So I've come to the art and craft of marketing through product. That's what I call my safety blanket. So anytime I discharge my craft, sometimes I find myself tending more towards the product side of things. So one of the things I am continuously learning is the other aspects of being, CMO. For example, global events, a different kind of, say, pushing the organization maybe more towards a brand-centric approach, right? These are things that are not natural to me. So I do work and I surround myself with people that help me understand what that is. And at some point also help me work through the complexities of that craft as well. right? So you can't, so in many cases, you've got to figure out where your wheelhouse is, what your strengths are, and whether those strengths are important to you as you sort of discharge your journey and you work on things.
And finally, what is one underrated marketing trend that you think is going to shape the next 5 or 10 years and all of us aren't paying attention to quite enough?
I would tell you that it's, I don't know whether it's underrated, but I think automation in marketing is here to stay, AI in particular. The way content copy gets written, the way sort of, the campaigns are going to be built. Things like machine learning, AI, they have not, entered the realm of marketing in a profound way, but I think you're going to see it make rapid strides in the next 5 years, and it'll completely change the craft of marketing.
According to JG Chirapurath, CMO of SAP, the first step of effective marketing is understanding how customers experience our products. Does the customer want to engage online? Does the customer want to try before they buy? If you remove the white space between you and your customer, if you make a ham sandwich that actually fits their dietary needs and taste profile, you'll have a North Star to guide key marketing decisions. JG says it's a similar sense of alignment between you and your team. Does your team want to meet with you without having to jump through lots of hoops? Does your team want to feel like you believe in them just as much as they believe in you? Leadership is a constant process of communication, connection, and empowerment. And it's crucial to hire the right candidates for leadership positions based on complementary skills, cultural fit, and teachability. So be fearless. Develop talent. Run simple. Surround yourself with great people and be generous with your time. You might even invite your colleagues out for lunch. I'd suggest a ham sandwich. For Top CMO, I'm Ben Kaplan.
This amazing episode was brought to you by Top Thought Leader. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.